Okay, so now we're recording. I am going to start by giving you some generalities. So let's go to a PowerPoint first to get started. I'm going to share this document with you. And let's see. Okay, so since this is a big group, I've muted everybody. And if you have questions, you can go on the chat. I want to talk about Perusall. Most of this presentation will be kind of hands-on, how do you do things? But before we do that, I just wanted to talk just a bit about what this can do so that you know if this is the right Zoom meeting workshop to go to. So during this talk, I will answer the following 10 questions, pretty much in this order. So if you have one of these questions, you might want to wait until I get to that point. But if I miss out on what you are interested in, please let me know. I will try to answer it. So what is Perusall? That's the first question. It was originally designed to get your students to read their primary texts. That's the goal. So it's a software package that creates a social media reading of a primary text where students can make comments, they can comment on other students' comments, they can ask questions, they can ask you questions, they can ask other students questions. It's kind of like a Moodle forum. The one big benefit is it actually assesses everything. So instead of you having to make judgment calls on the quality of comments in a forum, it actually does a great job heuristically grading those comments. So you can tell if a student's really participating at the same level as, say, another student. The Perusall people are super nice. Every time I've ever contacted them, I've gotten a reply within a couple of hours. I think the longest was 12 hours. Also, they just posted this document that says they are trying to work with publishers. So if your primary text would have cost money, because ebooks do cost money, these particular publishers might be willing to waive those fees. Perusall itself is free, but if you want to add an e-text, the students obviously have to pay for the e-text. But again, these publishers might be willing to do it for free if you contact Perusall. Most of what we're going to do today is uploading your own PDF documents. Access to those is free. You can upload as many as you want, as big as you want, as long as it's a PDF document. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Okay, so let's go and see a little bit about what this can do. Is this for you? Is this something I can use in my class? So I'm going to jump over for a second to another window. Let's see here, I've got to go to, got to switch, oh, here we go. I got to share this other window over here that looks like this. This is actually Perusall. This is the Perusall site. This is what it looks like when you go there. You'll notice I have a couple of classes here. The one I used the most was the modern physics, so let's take a look at that. You will notice in the modern physics, there are a ton of assignments. These are all reading assignments. Notoriously, students don't like to read their physics assignments, so this kind of helped them get motivated to do it. Let's pick one. I'll pick the very first assignment and open it so you can see what this looks like. Okay, you will notice here, it looks like the textbook. It is the textbook, but there are places that are highlighted. Places that are highlighted are places where students had questions and comments about the reading. Now, to see those, you have to do a couple of things. One, make sure you're looking at all the comments, this button up here, and then go over here to the all conversations, and you will see that the students had a tremendous number of conversations about the reading. And if we go to one, say like this one, this was all based on this one phrase in the reading. Somebody highlighted it and said, how does this work? Another student chimed in with what they thought might be the answer to that question. Somebody else has their own thoughts. And then they start to muse on other things that might be related to that. The students can comment all they want. They can also put a check mark if they like a comment. So it's kind of like Facebook in that way. You can actually say, hey, I like your comment. You get kudos if you make good comments. To do this is really easy to do. All the student needs to do is to go in, put the cursor down right about here. Oops, here we go. Highlight something like this. I'm a little trouble here. Okay, sometimes. There we go. And just start typing like, what is this? And now other students can comment on that. You can also do something really fun that you can't do in most other platforms. You can do it for the pictures too. You can click on this icon at the top that looks like a picture, go down to a picture and go highlight that and say, so who is this guy? And now you've highlighted the picture. So students can highlight equations, they can highlight pictures, they can highlight text, they can write comments, they can answer other people's comments. That's how it was designed to work. And it works very well. It scores all of these. If you go back to the beginning of the assignment, I can do that. You will notice it tells you some basic information. It also will show you all the comments and how it scores it. Sometimes it scores 0, sometimes it scores 1, sometimes it scores 2. That's all based on the complexity of the comments and the questions. And it's pretty good. You can go in and modify it if you don't like the scores, but they're pretty good. Now, what else could you do with this? Because a lot of you might have primary reading already taken care of. I'm going to go to another class and show you some different kinds of assignments. These are 3 I made. One is based on an art painting, one is based on a PowerPoint slide, and one is based on group work. So for instance, let's say you had an art history class and you wanted to do some group work. You can do something like this, where you make a PDF document out of your picture, you ask them to comment on elements in the picture. If I turn on all the comments, you'll see that somebody is looking at this segment of the picture. They're wondering about the waves. Somebody is looking at this picture, thinking about the motion lines. Another student could go in and say, they could highlight this and say, here's the bicycle. To which somebody else could respond, great, thanks. So this would be kind of a group work you could do in an art history class. Another example of something you might do, I do this all the time. When my students have to do presentations, I do a bad slide, good slide. I'll show them a PowerPoint slide and say, what's wrong with this? And the students will have to decide what elements of the slide are wrong so that they know when they make their PowerPoints, they're a little bit better. So let's see what people said here. Somebody said, oh, font is terrible. Somebody went over here and said, I hate this picture. Yeah, he looks like a robot. Don't like the background, too dark. I love this one. Does anyone really want to know about this? Superfluous information. So that's another way you could use this. You could use it to kind of give feedback on PowerPoint slides. The last example I have, and then I'll take questions, is what if you just have straight up group work based on a text document? I do this in science fiction all the time. I give them a short science fiction story and then ask them questions. The students could then do group work. Somebody could try to answer this question. I think this is how batteries work. Somebody could reply, no, that's not it. Somebody else could reply, well, if you look in the story, they tell you how this works. Somebody else could go down to the story and say, you know, I found some primary source information in here. Oh, look at this. I think this answers question A. So I think as a source of feedback or group work, it could also work as that capacity. I'll stop for a second now. Does anybody have any questions? If so, put them in the chat and Ann will help out.
Yeah, I don't see anything in the chat quite yet, but I'm going to give
great.
people a little bit, a minute
So
to.
now that you've kind of seen how this works, what I'm going to do is show you how to do it, right? Because this is all great, but how do you do this? So to do that, I'm going to go back here
Hey,
to
Steve,
my, yeah, sure.
interrupt you. So you do have a question in the chat, and since you just did your pause, I'm going to go ahead and
Okay.
a couple questions. So let's go ahead and handle questions for a sec.
Yep.
Okay. All right. One question. Can you not have the grades, and how are the grading consistencies? Do you agree with the grading?
Okay, I can answer that question. Two things. One, you always have grades, but you don't have to use them. You can actually turn off the feature that sends the grades back to the Moodle. The students would never see the grades unless you shared them. And if they don't go back to the Moodle, they will have no impact on the students' overall grades. So yes, you can turn off the grades. You'll still see them, but the students will never see them and they'll never go back to the Moodle. I'll show you how to do that later. How consistent is it? It's amazingly good. Once in a while, I'll go in and say, that comment really was a 2, not a 1, and I'll change it. But you're talking about 10% of the time. So the heuristic algorithm is actually pretty good. And the students adapt pretty quickly. They realize if they ask the question, how does this work? They get a 0. If they write, in this picture, how does the person do this? It goes up to a 1. If they say, in this picture, I don't see how this person does this and why it comes out to this, they get a 2. So the students learn how to ask better questions because the scores will go up. But again, you don't have to score anything. It doesn't have to go back to the Moodle, and you don't have to use them.
All right, and one more question. Can you show us some of the grading comments? That's from Mark.
Okay, sure. Let me go back here for a second to that window. Here we go. Share. Okay, so for instance, if I go back to, say, the other class where I have lots of grades, and I pick on an assignment, you'll notice it's scoring all these students. It likes these comments. It gives them a 2. If I think it's wrong and it only deserves a 1, I could bump them down. But students are pretty good. They learn pretty quickly that their questions need to be complicated enough to get a 2. And again, if you see this question and you read it and go, you know, that's actually a pretty good question, you can bump it up to a higher score. It keeps track of this. And if you go to the grade book, and I can show you this over here, it actually will tell you for this assignment, the student got the following grade, and the overall grades are 0 to 3. 3 is fantastic, 2 is very good, 1 is okay. 0 means they did it, but poorly. So if you go to the grade book, and kind of a dangerous thing, but you can see it scores them all, and I can check them all, and it's pretty good. It's pretty accurate. You don't have to use the grades, and you don't even have to send them back to the Moodle. I don't, because I don't want the Moodle to be cluttered up with extra grades. Any other questions before we go on? All right, great. So how do you do this?
Sorry, there's one more.
Okay, what is it?
Natalie Grinnell asks, what if they write complex sentences that are digressions? How are those scored?
Okay, so if they do that, the algorithm would have trouble because it's grading on linguistic complexity. So if they write linguistic complexity in a digression, it wouldn't necessarily know. So you would have to kind of spot check and see what people are writing. But to be honest, if somebody starts to do that a lot, the other students might chime in and complain to them that that's off topic. But like any forum, somebody eventually has to moderate. It'll give the scoring, but you still have to have a hand in things. So let's talk about actually getting a Perusall account. So to do that, I want to go back to my PowerPoint for a second. So let me do that. Okay, and let's jump right in here. Okay, so let's say you like this and you think you can use it in your class. It's totally free. How do you do it? You go to Perusall, which is not hard to find. You can Google it or use this IP address. You sign up for an account, takes about 10 minutes. They're going to try to convince you to set up a class right from the get-go. Go ahead and do it, but don't put in any of the details. This is really just a case where I need to get my foot in the door. So go ahead, pretend to set up a class, but you don't have to upload any documents. You don't have to create any assignments. All that will be done later when we establish a link from Moodle over to Perusall. So just go in, set up the simplest class you can. You don't have to type in any details. Then the way you create a real class, one that you're going to edit and add documents to, is from the Moodle side. So how do you do that? You have to use an external tool. Now, this looks complicated, and the very first time you do it, it's a little tricky, but you only have to do it once. You'll never have to do it again because you can always duplicate this. So when you set up the tool, you need the following 4 pieces of information in the tool, and I'm going to do one in a second. And if you type these 4 things in just once, you'll establish the tool. It'll be ready to go. You can duplicate it. You can put it in your sharing cart, and you'll never have to do it again. So let's go ahead and try it. So I'm going to set up exactly this tool in one of my classes that does not currently have a Perusall. So here we go. So let me share this. I'm going to go over here. This is Moodle. And this class does not have a Perusall. It does not have a link. I'm going to set one up right now. Okay, so how do I do that? Not too bad. Okay. Go back here to this. Okay. I'm going to go down here and I need to turn on my editing. Okay. I'm going to go down here and add an activity. And I want the external tool, like that, external tool. Okay, now I need to add those 4 things. Not too bad. First one, Perusall, done. The other ones you can't see yet. You have to do the show more, but if you show more, okay, down here, tool URL. So now I'm going to put in this URL. It's on the PowerPoint. I'm just going to grab it over here. I got a Word file running. I'm going to grab it here like this, copy, and drop it in to the tool right there like this. Okay, that's in. You could just type it or you could copy it. It has to be in a new window. Perusall does not like anything other than new window. So you got to go to a new window. Now this part is optional. I like the little P. If you don't care, if you don't get the little P, you don't have to do this. But I like the little P. It tells the student I'm using Perusall. That also is a URL, and I'm just going to copy it. I'm going to copy it over here and paste it over here. Boom. Okay, tore the Band-Aid off. That is the hardest part. I've configured the tool. So now, when I have Perusall and the tool URL and new window, and this is just for fluff, but you'll see it's kind of pretty. I can just hit save and return to course. Okay, and you'll see, oh, look at that, giant P, says Perusall, the world's good. I never have to do this again because anytime I want an assignment, I can just duplicate this and change the name. That's all I would have to do is duplicate it and change the name. So I don't have a Perusall class yet until I click on it. And when I do, I now have a Perusall class. And it's asking me to set up all the documents and readings. If you go to all my courses, you'll see, here it is now. That wasn't there before. I know it's coming from Moodle because it says this, right? These are all the ones that were created for Moodle. This one was the one I started just to get the account, and I never use it. It's just to start the account. I could even delete it if I wanted to. But these are all linked to my Moodle, and that's how students will access everything. And so everything I do here is now linked to my Moodle. So that's how you get a class. Okay, I'll stop for a second. Does anybody have any questions?
All right. So I'm going to pause just a moment to see if anyone puts anything in. I don't see any questions right now.
Okay.
All right. I would say go. Oh, wait, here we go. So the tool URL is different for each of us when we create the course.
What happens is the tool URL is identical. What happens when you click on it, it notices which Moodle page you're coming from. So even though the URL and the name are all identical for everyone, since you're coming from a particular Moodle site, it knows that and links that particular Moodle to Perusall. So the tool looks the same for everyone. The results are different for everyone.
All right. Another question, a simple but important question would get a low score, right?
If you wrote something like, "Good job, man," or "I don't get it," that would get a low score. They would have to then say, "I don't get it because I don't get this aspect." That would get bumped up. So it is really a linguistic complexity. You can always go in and change it. If you think something is short but amazing, insightful, you can bump it up to a 2.
All right, and a follow-up question on the URL is, so they can use the URL that is on your PowerPoint. So the URLs that you have put in there for the icon.
That is it. Yeah, everyone would do the same thing. Right, that page is exactly what you need to do. Okay, let me go on then. Hold on.
Hold on a sec, one more. Do you create a separate Perusall link for each reading assignment on Moodle in your classes? Can we see one of your Moodle pages with Perusall links for the readings?
Sure. When you create a link, you do need one that's different for every, oh, wait, I can just do it from here. I'll go over to a different Moodle like this. I have quite a few Moodles. Let's see, let's go to the Moodle related to modern physics. So let's say 218. Okay, so I need to go to a past Moodle, but I can do this for you, sure. Past. And I need to find 211. Let's go. Maybe not so easy. Oh, here it is. Sorry. Okay, this is a class that I use the Moodle for. Notice there's my Perusall access. First assignment looks just like this. It's exactly identical in every way if you look at it, except for the title. Right? It has the same settings, same launches, everything's the same. All I did was duplicate it and change the name. The name of the assignment on Moodle must match the name on Perusall exactly. But as long as it's unique, this actually takes them to a reading, not to Perusall. It'll take them to the actual reading. So if I click on that, instead of taking me to the general Perusall page, it will take me only to that assignment. There we go. So yes, every assignment will have to have their own link, but it's not hard to make a link because you can just keep duplicating, changing the name. So, okay. Couple other things I wanted to talk about is settings. You've got this new Perusall class like this. Are there any settings you might want to adjust? There are a couple. If you look at the PowerPoint, I mentioned about 4 different ones that I'm going to go over real quick. Okay, so I'm starting this class. I haven't even put documents in yet, but I might want to mess with the settings. Okay, so here we go. I don't need to change much of this at all. These are the directions that Perusall gives the students. If you don't like that, you should change them, but I like the directions. Access, you can add invitations to other people. I don't mess with that. This is one you definitely want to think about. You can break your class up into chunks. You can say, I don't want 20 people all commenting because I'll stop having meaningful comments when 20 people do it. I can take the whole class and break it up into groups of, say, 5. If I do that, it randomly assigns 5 students to a group. Those 5 students are the only 5 that will see the comments. I see them all, but that group would only see it, the comments. I can then have it randomize that for every assignment. If you don't like that, if you want to set up your own groups, you can do that too. It will then list all the students and ask you to put them in group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4. So you can literally pick the groups if you want to. That's a great option, especially if you're doing group work, right? Where you know, I want these 4 people to work together. I want these 5 people to work together. Or if you don't care who it is, you can just have Perusall do it, and it will, for every assignment, break up the class into chunks that big. Nice option. I use it sometimes. You can change it if you want later. It's not in stone. Scoring, you don't have to mess with this too much. One thing you might want to notice, it's defaulting to 7. What that means is for a student to get a really good score, they have to put in 7 comments. If you think they need to put in 10, you can change that forever. If you want to adjust it for each individual assignment, you can do that too, but it's always going to default to 7 unless I change this number. Also, do I want to mess with late responses? You can handle that. I might want to allow them to turn stuff in late, but not get points. I might want them to turn stuff late and get points. That's up to you, right? There is an extension option. So if a student asks for an extension, that's totally different, right? They can ask you for that, and inside an assignment, you can change that. 2 advanced things to look at. Here's the part about sending grades back to Moodle. If I don't want to do that, I can just turn that off. I do that all the time. I don't want to mess up my grade sheet. All my assignments don't involve grades. I turn it off. They exist. I can see them on the Perusall, but they won't go back to the Moodle. Other people want everything, and they'll handle it later. That's up to you. This is my favorite down here. I can, let's see. Okay, oops, can't see it. My bar is in the way. There's a thing at the very bottom, I think you can see, that says, stop reminding them to do the assignment. I tell my students, I don't have that option. I don't know how to turn that off. So they get annoying notes every few days if they haven't started the assignment that says, you need to start this assignment. And they'll say, can you turn that off? And I'll say, oh, I'm not that tech savvy. I don't know how to do that. But you can actually turn that off. So is that a lie? I don't know. Anyway, that's a nice feature if you don't want to badger them. So those are some of the settings that I would think about changing. You don't have to. A lot of them can be changed for each individual assignment if you want, but if you want to change them for the entire course, you can do it right up front. Does anybody have any questions? Because I'm going to go and show you how to upload documents.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions here.
Okay.
Natalie asks, does it make a difference which version of PDF form you are using from an MS Word document? If you were saving a .x file to a .pdf file, I mean.
It has to be a .pdf file. That's the only thing it'll let you upload. So you have to convert your .x, your PowerPoint, your JPEG, whatever it is you want to upload has to be in a PDF, and it has to be vertical. That's one of the limitations. It has no ability to rotate documents. So if you have a document that has to be rotated, you need to rotate it first, then copy it and make it a PDF, because it has to be in a vertical format. So it has to be vertical format .pdf.
Natalie follows up, right, but there are 2 PDF file formats in Word right now.
I would go with the straight up PDF, the simpler version.
Question from Kay, can Perusall do any optical character recognition, or does your PDF have to already have it? I have some texts that are scanned.
As long as it's a PDF, it's fine. That group work that I showed you was actually a scan. It didn't come from Word. So I scanned it in. It has a little bit of trouble with scanned documents, only in the sense that sometimes it's harder to highlight. But it will do scanned PDF documents. The students might have to kind of play with it a little bit to highlight the part that they want, but it will do it.
All right, and this is a question for me. So do you find that this is so intuitive that students do not need to have a training assignment, or would you recommend that you put up an assignment that is not worth anything, but just gets them practicing with how to do this?
I think it's very, very intuitive. My very first assignment, I gave them no directions other than the ones that Perusall gives. The only students that got poor scores were the students who didn't do the assignment. Everybody who tried it right out of the get-go started getting 1s and 2s, high scores. I asked if there were questions in class, and they were like, well, no, you just highlight the text and write stuff, or highlight the pictures and do stuff. So I don't think a training assignment would be necessary. You could always make one.
All right, I think that's all for questions for right now.
Okay, so uploading documents. Notice the class I just created is essentially blank. How do I do that? I go to documents like this, and it wants me to add. Okay, I'll add from my computer. Okay, so I've got a lot of stuff in this folder. One is a short story I use in class called Mars, a Traveler's Guide. I click on that and I say open. Now, it has to convert the PDF into its own format of PDF. That takes about a minute or two for every 10 pages. So if you have a very long document, like 100 pages, it might take 10 minutes. You do not have to hang around and watch it. You can go do something else. So for instance, while it's working on that, let's go do something else. I'd like to show you some of the data that you can get from this, because it's really quite amazing. So here's an assignment. Here's what I can tell you with the students. 70 comments came in, 30 questions, 10 unanswered. I could go in and answer those questions if I wanted to. Here's how long the students spent on the assignment, about 39 minutes on average. That's interesting. I can look at each of the comments individually. I can do it per student if I want. I can only look at certain kinds of comments, certain kinds of scoring. There's a confusion report. If you click on this, after the assignment is done, it will tell you what were the sections of the reading that had the most number of questions. There you go. It tells me there are about 3 topics in the reading that had more questions than anything else. I might want to talk about those things. Very nice feature. Analytics. This tells you the grades. In general, here were the grades for that assignment. I gave full credit for 3s and 2s. 3 and 2 is very good or excellent. Only just one student didn't quite make it. You can also do a heat map. I love this. When do you students actually do this assignment? This assignment was due in the morning here, but look at how many people were doing it at 2 a.m. I mean, you can actually see when the assignment gets done, which is kind of nice. I think that's a nice analytic. And then one more analytic I was going to tell you about, page report. It can tell you how many comments were made on each page. So you can see, obviously, students tend to do lots of things at the beginning and then kind of drop off a little bit at the end. You can put in a penalty for that. You can tell the system if they don't do the entire document to reduce their score. So that's kind of nice. Let's go back to that other class where I was uploading. Okay, so it was my 104 document. Okay, it's there now. That document is completely there. I can open it. I can look at it. It's a nice PDF document. I'm ready to make an assignment. So how do I do that? How do I make an assignment? Okay, I go back here to my course, and this time I click on assignment, and I say, hey, I want to add an assignment. It says, what do you want to look at? Well, I want to do Mars, a Traveler's Guide. Oh, do you want to do the whole thing? Like if you had a play, or do you want to do just like the first 10 pages? So I can pick the range. I can decide, do I want to read the whole thing? Do I want to read just the beginning, just the end? I can actually do different parts. So if I tell it I want pages 1 through 3, it'll then ask me, do you want any other parts, like 5 through 7? So it'll let you pick and choose parts of the assignment. Let's say I want to do the whole document. Okay, I don't know what happened there. Okay, next step, deadline. I can put in a deadline. When do I want this due? Totally up to me. I can set a time and a date. Maybe I want it due tomorrow. I have to give it a name, and it has to be unique. So how about Mars story? Okay, that I need to know because when I put the link on the Moodle, that has to be the link. The names have to match. Instructions, I can put special instructions. Please comment on 5 things in the story, period. Or any directions you want to give. The next step would be, oh, wait, I just said 5 comments. Remember, it defaults to 7. I can just set that to 5. Some readings might need 10. Some might need 3. That's totally up to you. I can tell them when they can see it. If you don't want to see it right away, you can say, hey, don't show it to them for a couple of days. I can actually have specialized assignments like extra credit. I can tell it, I only want this student to do this assignment. So if you were workshopping up a paper and you had students and you only wanted these 3 students to do it, you could do that. And then you could workshop up another paper and have just 3 students do it. So you can actually select which assignments go to which students. The default is everybody does it. But I can actually say, no, just these 3. I can make it completely anonymous. Right now, if they do this, their initials show up. But if you want it to be completely anonymous, you can click on that. Students will see comments, but they will not self-identify the comments unless the students actually tell people who they are. So that's nice. You can even make assignments optional, like anybody does that. So, but you could, right? You could say, if you feel like doing this, go ahead. And if you feel like not doing it, don't do it. So I've set it up and I say save changes. I now have an assignment. I have no analytics because nobody's done it, but I have an assignment. Okay, does anybody have a question about any of that?
Okay, so Steve, I have a question from Natalie, and Natalie, I'm sorry, I'm going to rephrase this in my own wording. So what's the benefit to knowing when students are doing assignments?
Oh, if you know when students tend to work on assignments in general, then you can do things like, oh, can I add something to this assignment? Well, most of them might have already done this. I would feel bad. Go and look and say, well, no, none of them do this before the night before. It's just kind of fun. It's a fun analytic. It doesn't really do anything for you other than let you know, when people are actually working on their assignments.
All right, and then I have a question, which is something that you mentioned the way that you do the grading is that a 2 or a 3 is for full credit. So
Mm-hmm.
can you say a little bit more about how, so you don't just pull in Perusall's grades, you look at the grades and you assign your own. Can you say how you do your grading?
What I do is I go to the grade book in Perusall. If somebody got a 3, I give that full credit. If they get a 2, I give that full credit. If somebody gets a 1, I actually go back in and look at why. I'll go look at their comments specifically. Was it they didn't do 5 comments, or they did 5 comments, but they were all weak comments, or occasionally, very rarely, maybe it misscored one of their comments as a 1 and it should have been a 2. So I can then look at that. 0 doesn't mean they didn't do it. It meant they did it very poorly. So in class, what I did was if you got a 2 or a 3, I gave you a 10 out of 10. If you got a 1, I gave you an 8 out of 10. If you got a 0, which sounds not intuitive, I gave you a 6 out of 10. Because 0 doesn't mean you didn't do it. It means you did it badly. The only people I gave zeros were if it says there's no grade at all, the student didn't do the assignment at all. And that I gave a 0.
Thank you. And then this is probably more of a comment from Mackie. He says, I have used Perusall and it really gets the students reading the assignments. It is straightforward for them. One question I have gotten from students is, how many comments are required for the assignment? It is apparently not obvious from the student's view. You can tell them up front it will always be a certain number, or you can put the number of comments required in the name of the assignment.
Right. Or you could put it in the directions. When they click on an assignment, the direction field shows up. So if you say do 5 comments, it actually will say do 5 comments. But some of them don't read the directions. So yes, I tended to remind the students on the Moodle. I would write on my Moodle, this assignment has 5 questions. You could put it in the name of the assignment if you wanted to. So yes, but at some point, if you get into a consistency like every assignment is 5 unless otherwise specified, then students know. Anything else? I'll move on because now we have an assignment. I want to link it to the Moodle. Okay, great.
We can move on.
Okay, so now I have this beautiful assignment. It's ready for the students. It's got a date. It's got directions. How do I actually post this on my Moodle? Nothing could be simpler. I just have to remember it's called Mars Story. I go back to my class, and I was in Physics 104. So let me grab Physics 104. Here we go. All right, so now I'm ready to put the assignment in. I duplicate this like this. I go in, and I could probably do it right there if I wanted to, but I like to go back. You don't have to do it. You could just change the title right there. I just need to change the title. That's it. Mars Story. It just has to match the Perusall thing exactly. I don't have to change anything else. It now says Mars Story. When the student clicks on that, it takes them automatically over to Perusall and gives them the assignment. And they can start working. So that's all it takes to make an assignment. I make it in Perusall first, then I put a link over in the Moodle, but that just means duplicate the previous assignment and change the name. And then it comes over here like this, and they can start working. There are all kinds of things they can do. All they really need to know is this is how you annotate text. This is how you annotate figures. And that's pretty much it. All this other stuff is extra. This button is kind of nice so you can see all the conversations that have gone on. But other than that, it's pretty nice. And you now have an assignment. Now, a great question to ask is, do they have to enroll? That's the beauty of this. The first time they do the first assignment, it automatically enrolls them, right? So when they hit on Mars Story, it'll take them to Perusall. It'll ask them to set up a password for themselves. It will load them to your roster, and that's how they get in. I don't have to give them any special codes. I don't have to do anything else other than post an assignment that they click on. So that's pretty much it. There are some other features. Since we have time, I'll mention. You can have general discussions, kind of like a message board or a forum. That's something you might want to mess around with. You can have a one-on-one discussion with a student, right? So it does function in some ways as a forum, right? Because you can do general discussion or one-on-one discussions. There are student views. If you're curious what they see, you can go to a student view. You can add notifications, notes, calendar stuff. There's all kinds of features you can add later. I've just been talking about the basics. You can change the page size, by the way. If you like to fit to the page, you can do stuff like that. Is it working? It seems to be struggling just a bit. But usually you can fit the page to the screen or change the size. I don't know why it's not working right now. Two other aesthetic things, and then I'll open the door to questions. This dummy class that I set up just to get a Perusall account, do I need this? It's kind of aesthetically ugly, right? Because all my other classes have Moodle links. I could just delete the hell out of that thing. I could just go, hey, I don't need you, you're gone. If I want to do that, I go here to settings, and this is good to know anyway. I can delete. I can just get rid of that class if I don't want it, or if I set it up wrong, then you could just hit delete, and that dummy class would be gone. Another aesthetic thing that you might want to think about is this original Perusall I used to set up my class. I don't really need that anymore, and students don't need to click on it. It doesn't do anything. It won't take them to an assignment. It just takes them to Perusall in general. So what I usually do is I hide it, because I don't need it anymore, and the students don't need it anymore. I could obviously click on it anytime I want and go to Perusall, but students just need to click on the assignments. So aesthetically, it's not showing up, and students aren't clicking on it for no reason. So kind of aesthetics. Does Perusall cost anything? This is a great question. If you post nothing but PDFs, it costs nothing. The only time the student has to pay anything is if you use e-textbooks. If you use an e-textbook, the first time they hit the first assignment, it's going to ask for either a credit card or an access code from the bookstore. If you just post PDFs, it's free. They don't have to pay anything. I've got about 10 minutes left. That's all I've got. Are there other questions?
Yeah, Steve. So Kay asked, so Perusall changes the due date in Moodle. Does that show up on the Moodle calendar?
That I do not know. I have not looked to see if that happens.
Okay. And can you, so you, just to follow up a little bit on what you had said about the being free.
Mhm.
But you did say that because of what's going on with coronavirus, a number of publishers are making their texts available for free on Perusall.
Yeah, if
you're using.
Yeah, let me go back to the PowerPoint for just a second, so that you can see that page again. Okay, slideshow. Right here. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so they mentioned to me, I got this email just the other day, that if you happen to be using textbooks from these companies, those companies may waive the access fee, so that you could use your textbook with Perusall. I will tell you one thing, when you add documents, if you go to add a textbook, sometimes that does take a day, right? That is the slowest part of the process. If you say, I want to add a textbook, you have to leave 24 hours before they actually get it linked to your account. Now, if this is true and these publishers are going to give you some kind of access code, that you have to contact Perusall about directly. But they claim that these publishers will allow you to do it.
All right.
Other questions? I have one more slide at the end here. Here we go. It's a tricky business right now, and I think we have a lot of online tools. The problem is we have too many online tools, and you have to kind of pick and choose. You know, using 8 things for a class could be tricky. I'm going to try to pare mine down to 2 or 3 things, so that I don't have to manage a Perusall and a Moodle and a Zoom and a something else and a something else and a something else. I think Perusall is a nice tool, certainly to get your students to read. It works. I think it could be used for group work or workshopping. And it is free, and it's pretty robust. It does keep a lot of great data, and it's pretty easy to use once you have the initial link. Anything else?
All right. It doesn't look like there are any more questions. Let's see. Begonia, can you comment more on workshopping?
Okay, what I mean by workshopping is I know a lot of people in the humanities will do things like, I have a student and they have a rough draft. I could write feedback, but I'd rather their peers do feedback. So what you could do is you could take a student's paper and post it in PDF format, assign it to only a small cadre, say 3 or 4 students, and say, it's your job to give them feedback. And you could do it anonymously if you wanted to, or not. And that student can see that document with all the comments that they write. And you could then say, okay, now the second student in the group, let's post one of their papers with the same cadre. And so you could kind of get a group of students to workshop up each other's papers. And then use that as a way to transform the rough draft into the next draft. That's all I mean by workshopping.
Yeah, and Steve, when you say that the students are anonymous, they're anonymous to one another, but you still know who has made which comments, correct?
Right. Yeah, you know everything. You know all the scores, whether you use the scores or not, who's writing what. Yeah, everything you know.
And Natalie says, if you put only 2 people in a group, you could use this for traditional peer editing, yes?
Sure. Right. You'd have to put in one document for each group of 2 students, but there's no reason why you couldn't say this document is shared by only these 2 people and do traditional peer editing. Sure.
All right. So if there are no other questions, and if Steve does not have anything else he wants to add, a suggestion that Begonia sent to me the other day, which I thought was a nice idea, was that we could maybe unmute everyone so that we could all say goodbye, hello, goodbye, before we come off. So if you want to either unmute yourself, or Steve, if you want to unmute everyone, we can.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wait. Did I do it?
Yeah.
Yes.
You did.
Oh, great. Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Steve.
Steve.
Thank you.
Steve.
Good to see everybody.
Alan, that's a really nice teacup. Look how
Okay.
beautiful.
I will see you all
Very
later.
classy.
Thank